Hello and welcome. This is Deep Dive and I'm Tiffany Meier. It's great to still be here. For those wondering, we are working on a Rumble account and looking at other platforms, but till then, I'll still be here. And we do have some breaking news coming in. There are 22 states filing against the Texas lawsuit and 18 on the side of Texas. So we'll get into that a bit more later. But on the note of big tech, the U.S. government and nearly every state is suing Facebook. They accuse the company of breaking antitrust laws. Here are the details. The U.S. Federal Trade Commission and nearly every U.S. state sued Facebook on Wednesday, saying that it violated antitrust law and should potentially be broken up. That could mean the forced sale of two major platforms it owns, Instagram and WhatsApp. Led by New York Attorney General Letitia James, the coalition of 46 states, Washington, D.C., and Guam accused the behemoth social media company of using its dominance in the industry to crush the competition.
For nearly a decade, Facebook has used its dominance and monopoly power to crush smaller rivals and snuff out competition, all at the expense of everyday users.
The complaints on Wednesday accused Facebook of buying up rivals, focusing specifically on its previous acquisitions of Instagram for $1 billion and messaging app WhatsApp for $19 billion. Federal and state regulators said the acquisitions should be unwound.
Facebook would try to squeeze every bit of oxygen out of the room for smaller companies that refuse to be bought. They also sent a clear message to the industry. Don't step on Facebook's turf. Or, as one industry executive put it, you will face the wrath of Mark.
Facebook's chief executive, Mark Zuckerberg, told employees in July that Facebook would go to the mat to fight a legal challenge to break up the company, calling it an existential threat, according to audio of internal company meetings published by The Verge. The U.S. Justice Department sued Alphabet's Google in October, accusing the $1 trillion company of using its market power to fend off rivals. The lawsuits are the biggest antitrust cases in a generation. Facebook shares fell nearly 2% after the news. And Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg said in a memo to employees that he promises to fight the lawsuits. He urged employees to stay focused and told them not to discuss the case except with Facebook's legal team. And now on the topic of lawsuits, let's take a look at Texas. A little background: on Tuesday, the Lone Star State filed a motion with the Supreme Court asking for an emergency order to sue 4 states, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, and Wisconsin, on the grounds that these states unconstitutionally changed election laws. The suit says that in addition to changing the laws, they treated voters unequally and triggered significant voting irregularities by relaxing ballot integrity measures. In other words, the lawsuit seeks to overturn the election results in 4 key battleground states. So why did this case get fast-tracked to the Supreme Court, while so many other lawsuits haven't? Well, when one state sues another state, it automatically goes straight to the Supreme Court, jumping over legal hurdles the other lawsuits are currently stuck at. So who is suing? Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton filed a lawsuit Tuesday on behalf of the state of Texas. 18 states have joined Texas so far. Led by Missouri's Attorney General Eric Schmidt, the states filed a friend of the court brief on Wednesday. This level of support adds extra weight to the case, underscoring the amount of public importance and that it needs the attention of the nation's top court. These states are Missouri, Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Utah, and West Virginia, have all signed on to the brief that backs the Texas suit. These states say when election officials changed election rules, they may have been using powers only meant for lawmakers. That's per the Electors Clause in the U.S. Constitution. Under the U.S. Constitution, the times, places, and manner of holding elections may only be prescribed by the state legislature and Congress. The states wrote, encroachments on the authority of state legislatures by other state actors violate the separation of powers and threaten individual liberty. The states supporting the Texas suit all have Republican attorneys general. And another state, Arizona, followed the move Wednesday, pledging support to Texas in its own way. Arizona's Attorney General Mark Brnovich is asking the top court if he can file his own brief supporting the Lone Star State. That brings the current total to 18. According to the American Bar Association, friend of the courts or amicus curiae briefs are often filed in appellate cases heard by the U.S. Supreme Court and state Supreme Courts, as well as intermediate courts of appeal. And there is considerable evidence that amicus briefs have influence. With the lawsuit, Texas is hoping to obtain a declaration from the Supreme Court that the 4 states conducted the 2020 election in violation of the Constitution. It's also asking the court to prohibit the count of the Electoral College votes cast by the 4 states. As for the defendant states that have already appointed electors, it asks the court to direct the state legislatures to appoint new electors in line with the Constitution. Meanwhile, Texas is also seeking a preliminary injunction on a temporary restraining order to block the 4 states from taking action to certify their election results or to prevent the state's presidential electors from taking any official action. The presidential electors are scheduled to meet on December 14th. The Supreme Court ordered defendant states to respond to Texas's motions by 3 p.m. on December 10th, which is today. The 4 states have since responded, Pennsylvania calling the claims of fraud as, quote, baseless, and saying it's not up to the courts to pick the next president. Georgia, Michigan, and Wisconsin say Texas has no right to interfere in the state's way of conducting an election and that the Supreme Court shouldn't take up the case. And 20 states and 2 territories have filed a brief in opposition to the Texas lawsuit. And President Trump has also asked the court to allow him to join Texas in the case as a plaintiff. The president on December 9th described the case as the big one, adding that the country needs a victory. His lawyer said the president is intervening in the case in a personal capacity as a candidate for re-election. So aside from Texas, what other lawsuits are there? The Supreme Court on Tuesday rejected a request for injunctive relief by Pennsylvania lawmakers attempting to stop the certification of the election results. What does that mean exactly? The justices did not provide any comments and there were no noted dissents, and the court also did not address the request to review the case in its order. Some are pointing out that one reason the Pennsylvania case was dismissed could be that it's challenging the same issue as the Texas suit. Now let's take a look at attorney Sidney Powell's cases. Powell filed lawsuits in 4 key battleground states, Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, and Wisconsin, alleging the Dominion voting machines switched votes from Trump to Biden, and thus the election results in those states should be overturned. Federal judges in Arizona and Michigan dismissed her lawsuits, and similar lawsuits were also dismissed in Georgia and Wisconsin on Monday. Now, Powell is seeking an emergency review in Wisconsin. Powell says she's not surprised the judge dismissed her Wisconsin suit. She told the Epoch Times in an email, "We will seek emergency review. All the judges seem to be reading from the same DNC script. They are willfully blind to the greatest fraud in history." She's representing a Republican presidential elector. The lawsuit seeks to decertify and invalidate improper votes. The lawsuit alleges that, quote, massive election fraud and violations to the U.S. Constitution and Wisconsin election code occurred during the recent general election, which allowed hundreds of thousands of, quote, illegal ballots to be counted. The suit cites dozens of eyewitness accounts and statistical anomalies and mathematical impossibilities provided in sworn testimony by expert witnesses to back up its claims. The central argument of the lawsuits is that the software employed by counties to count the ballots, Dominion voting software, contains vulnerabilities that make it susceptible to significant fraud, and the software was used to manipulate the election outcome. The lawyers also alleged that state and election officials had violated the U.S. Constitution and Wisconsin election code by changing election rules amid the pandemic that effectively, quote, favored Democratic absentee voters over Republican voters and enabled and facilitated voter fraud. Federal Judge Pamela Pepper dismissed the lawsuit on Wednesday. She wrote, "Federal judges do not appoint the president in this country." One wonders why the plaintiffs came to federal court and asked a federal judge to do so. After a week of sometimes odd and often heralded litigation, the court is no closer to answering the why. Judge Pepper says the plaintiff has no legal standing to bring the case. She also says that since Wisconsin already certified and transmitted the results, the case is moot. And in Arizona, Sidney Powell's team plans to appeal the dismissal of its election lawsuit there as well. An Obama-appointed federal judge dismissed it on Wednesday, citing a lack of evidence. Powell's Arizona co-counsel, Alex Culloden, told the Epoch Times the team plans to fast-track the case to the Supreme Court, adding it will file a petition for appeal in the coming days. Powell filed the case on behalf of the state's 11 Republican electors and others. The lawsuit claims over 400,000 votes were cast illegally in the state. It also alleges that the Dominion voting systems violated election laws by having their machines connected to the internet. Judge Diane Himitiwa threw out the lawsuit on Wednesday, saying that its allegations are sorely wanting of relevant or reliable evidence and that it sought extraordinary relief, adding the lawsuit doesn't contain a plausible allegation that Dominion voting systems, voting machines, were hacked at the state during the November 3rd election. But she described the team's allegations of fraud as conceivable. Culloden told the Epoch Times that although Himitiwa dismissed the Arizona case, the judge acknowledged it was, quote, conceivable that fraud occurred with the Dominion voting systems equipment. Powell's team also filed a temporary restraining order seeking to immediately block Ducey from delivering the certified election results to the Electoral College while the court hears the case. Arizona certified its presidential election results on November 30th. And now on the topic of irregularities in this year's election, a Senate hearing next week aims to explore just that. The Senate Homeland Security Chairman says the hearing's goal is to resolve suspicions with transparency and public awareness. The December 16th hearing will be the first at the federal level examining fraud accusations and other irregularities. Hearings have been held in Georgia, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, featuring poll workers, experts, and Trump lawyers. Senator Ron Johnson, chairman of the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, said in a statement, quote, "I am mindful that many of the issues that have been raised have been and will continue to be appropriately resolved in the courts. But the fact remains that a large percentage of the American public does not view the 2020 election result as legitimate because of apparent irregularities that have not been fully examined. That is not a sustainable state of affairs for our country." According to officials, witnesses, whistleblowers, and data experts, some level of fraud and other irregularities occurred during the 2020 election. The level is disputed. Democrats and many officials argue it wasn't enough to alter the election results, while President Trump and Republicans say it does appear to be enough. So what do you think? Let me know below. Thanks for watching today's episode of Deep Dive. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Tiffany Meier, and see you soon.